Hi guys, and welcome to the very first video in our tutorial series on setting up a gRPC server in Go. In this tutorial that lies ahead, you're going to be learning about a really cool technology for building out APIs and microservices using what is undoubtedly my favorite programming language. And so we're going to be touching on what gRPC is, protocol buffers as the means of defining services and data types within the world of gRPC, and we're then going to work through a practical example of setting up a very basic microservices architecture using gRPC and Go to conduct simple inventory management and point of sales activities within a superstore. So to kick things off, I'm sure that many of us here have worked with traditional REST APIs delivered over HTTP, and we can all agree that they are often really not that fun to use. We have to construct these ugly and long request URLs. We have to populate these with request parameters. Sometimes we aren't sure whether we need to populate request parameters or send a request body. There's absolutely no type safety in the way we interact with these APIs. And there's a constant need to refer back to documentation to have any clue what's going on with the API or how we're supposed to interact with it. And so if we take a look at a little code snippet, right off the bat, we can see that on the left-hand side here, we have a traditional REST hit. And so we have to populate this request URL with these request parameters. That's really a bit ambiguous sometimes. And we have to then make this request, get back some response that's in the form of JSON, and then pass this JSON object into an actual object that we can work with in our programming language. And so it's quite an involved and laborious process to make use of a REST API. Whereas if we contrast this with gRPC on the right, all we have to do is set up a simple client to our gRPC server, and we can then call methods on that client as if we were calling methods on a local package. And the response that is returned to us is type safe and in an object of the programming language that we're using. And so immediately we can see that there are huge benefits to using gRPC. Enter gRPC. gRPC is an alternative way of making APIs that is fast, easy to use, and type safe. In gRPC, a client application can directly call a method on a server on a different machine as if it were a local function. And so it really makes these APIs super easy to use, and it allows us to build distributed applications and services, and particularly microservices, really easily. And so some of the advantages of gRPC is that it enables communication across a variety of environments and languages. It is excellent for building out microservices. It is super fast since it's using HTTP HTTP2 under the hood, which is the latest version of the HTTP protocol. It supports streaming out of the box, so there's no need to incorporate WebSockets. It follows a client response model instead of a request response model, which is what your typical REST framework would follow. And it is this client response model that enables the calling of functions in a way that feels very local. And yeah, it's type safe, and protocol buffers enable code generation in the creation of gRPC servers, which allows us to build them out really quickly. And so just looking at this diagram over here, we can see that there's some gRPC server that's being implemented in C++, and then we've got these two gRPC stubs. And what's important to note is that this server interface and these stubs are given to us by some of the code generation processes that are used in gRPC. And so all we have to do is simply implement this interface in a programming language, and we can then make use of the stub in a variety of different languages. Like here, for example, we have a Ruby client making hits to this server, and then we've got a Java client on an Android device making hits to this server. And so it enables these super distributed systems across a variety of environments and languages. And so gRPC is great, but if my word isn't enough for you, gRPC is also being used by some of the top tech companies worldwide. And so if we look at Google Cloud, for example, the whole of GCP is written on top of protocol buffers and gRPC. And Netflix has also quite recently adopted gRPC in the way that they've structured their architecture, and it's really enabled huge performance gains in their streaming platform and allowed them to dominate the market. And so it really is a powerful technology. And so gRPC is a widely adopted and used technology. And we now need to take a look at protocol buffers. And protocol buffers are essentially the heart of gRPC, and it's how we define the services and data types that make up gRPC. And so what protocol buffers are simply an interface definition language, which is a fancy way of saying that it's some text that is used to define a service and to define data types. And protocol buffers are what enables the code generation capabilities that we use in gRPC. And this is all stored in a .proto file. And if we have a look on the right here, this is a very, very basic example of what a .proto file might look like. And so this is a library service, which is composed of a RPC method called createBook. And createBook has to take in a data type as a request and returns a data type as a response. And so we see that the data type that it returns is a book, which is defined over here. And in the creation of a book, it takes in a request, which is defined over here. And so this may look a bit overwhelming initially, but all it is simply a way of defining services and data types that are required within our world of gRPC. So I'm now briefly going to touch on the example that we're going to be using throughout this tutorial, which is going to be a super simple point of sale system for managing inventory and generating slips. And so there's this superstore that wants to begin to set up a simple inventory and point of sale system. And all this is going to include for version 1 is some form of inventory management where we can keep track of products that the store is stocking and the quantity and price of those products, and then some basic point of sale system for generating slips based off of the quantity of products that a user is buying, and then referencing the back end to check the price and then update the available stock depending on the quantity purchased. And so it's going to consist of two simple microservices: resources inventory v1 and services POS v1. And finally, we have Alice Build. And so Alice Build is a tool that is really going to enable us to create these microservices very quickly. And there are 3 steps that form the main philosophy of Alice Build and Alice Exchange. And those are: number 1, we define; number 2, we implement; and number 3, we need some form of consumption. And so defining entails establishing what the resources and services are that are required by our application. Implementing is then taking these resources and services as they are defined in our .proto files and actually creating a server in Go using gRPC or any programming language for that matter. And then consume is that we need to have clients that are actually consuming these services that we've created. And so, I'm going to be able to show you guys a really cool tool that we use to enable this, which is the Alice Build platform, and specifically the Alice Build Lite platform, which is our version that is open for public consumption. And so I just want to end off by touching on this quote that really resonates with us as the team at Alice Exchange. And it says that by the end of 2025, over half of all business applications will be built by users who do not identify as professional developers today. And this is from Google Cloud Next 2022. And so at Alice Exchange, we really want to be able to create tools that enable your everyday developer, your business practitioner, your person with the business logic to start to be able to build out production grade software. And hopefully you'll get a taste of that in this tutorial. And so I'm really looking forward to this tutorial with you guys, and let's code.